Hey, IDC Church family. Pastor Shane here. Wanted to do a quick interview with Denise O'Donoghue, who is I don't exactly even know what your official title is, but with Refugee Hope Partners, one of IDC's ongoing and closest partners in ministry here in the city. So Denise, thanks for taking a little time. Let me just first educate me. What exactly is your role with Refugee Hope?
I'm the operations director.
Operations director. Okay. And for those, you guys have been a close partner for a long time, but for those who maybe don't know, give me a quick summary of what normally and what kind of ministry do you guys do here in the city?
Okay, sure. We work with refugees that are pretty much concentrated in one area of North Raleigh in the Cedar Point apartments, and we serve them by offering homework help to their children, English as a second language. For adults, we also have an early learning club for preschoolers and a bridge program helping high school juniors and seniors prepare for what comes after graduation from high school.
Very cool. Very cool. And tell us who lives at Cedar Point? Why there? How'd you guys land there?
Well, it has just over time become a settlement area where resettlement agencies are placing refugees as they come in. It's not a special, unique place. It's just a privately owned apartment complex, but this has been a place that over time the resettlement agencies have placed refugees. And so we are probably about 80 to 90% refugees in population out there right now.
Wow, very cool, very cool. Okay, so that's normal, but this is not a normal time. And so the reason we want to do this is just kind of update our church family on what's going on with you guys and what's going on at Cedar Point during this time when everything's kind of turned upside down with coronavirus. How has that kind of affected and shaped ministry over the last few weeks?
Well, basically it shut down everything that we were doing.
Just a small adjustment.
Just a small adjustment. We have a wonderful community center that we operate out of, but it's very close quarters. And of course, with the social distancing requirements and things like that, it just became totally impossible for us to continue with our programs, with the exception of a few things that we're doing on Zoom right now. ESL is continuing for a few students that have access to a computer through Zoom, and some of our gals are still able to join in on Bible studies. Some of our high school senior gals are still gathering through technology to have Bible study, but everything else has come to a screeching halt.
Yeah, no doubt. So how are, assuming here, but I know a little bit, I guess, but a lot of the folks that are living and working at Cedar Point or living at Cedar Point work in the kinds of jobs that seems like they would be kind of at risk for getting furloughed or laid off during this time. Are people finding employment? Are they getting laid off? How are people doing in general?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. If you think about a refugee or anyone that doesn't know a language, they're going to be very limited. No matter what their skill set is in their own language, they're going to be very limited. So most of our residents, our neighbors at Cedar Point, work in repetitive type jobs like housekeeping at a hotel or dining room services at NC State or painting or landscaping or those sorts of things. And so, yes, many of them have lost their jobs because those industries that would employ them are no longer serving populations, so they have no need of employees. And so we've seen a drastic drop in employment of our neighbors at Cedar Point.
And these are probably, especially just by virtue of being refugees, people who are already somewhat challenged in terms of income or whatever. So that's pretty devastating deal. So how does that shape the way you guys are trying to care for them and just do ministry there as you kind of adjust?
Yeah, one of the things that we were most concerned about as we started hearing about even the potential for job loss. We were in communication with NC State, which is one of our big employers early on about, first they were going to just let people stay in the dorm so they'd still keep the dining rooms open and that kind of thing. So it's kind of gradual, but we knew right away that there was going to be a situation with food shortages with our families. And then additionally, many of our children get 2 meals a day at school. And so that also was an issue with schools closing. Wake County has attempted to, resolve some of that with food delivery. For which we're grateful. But our main thing was making sure that families had enough to eat, because in their normal day-to-day life. Working in the types of jobs that they were working in was minimum wage for the most part. They have large families, many of them do, lots of mouths to feed. And so we saw that as our immediate first reaction was to try to make sure people had food.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. So how'd you guys line that up? I know some of our folks have participated in that. What was the initial?
Yeah. Well, initially we had this idea that we would just have a food drop-off site and people could drop food off, and we'd load it into a big trailer and we'd take it over to Cedar Point and we'd distribute it. And after, well, really, I knew 3 days in, we did it for 5. We realized that was not a sustainable model. And so we switched over to asking people if they would be willing to sponsor a family and provide supplemental food. Certainly not trying to be their only food source, but to be provide some supplemental food for them. And especially even in thinking about our families that did still have jobs, children were at home needing to eat. And so we wanted to make sure they had things that they could, easily eat on their own without having a parent there to cook. So we switched from the drop your food here to will you help us by serving one family? And the response has been incredible. Overall, we've had 26 families from IDC. We've had a total of 138 families get sponsored. IDC is the largest church group, yay, that is sponsoring. And so that has been a real great thing. And of course, it is about the food. It is about meeting that immediate need, of course, but we are praying diligently that these relationships that these people are creating with these families will, there's going to be a day when we can all be together and we can celebrate. I hope it's before heaven, but, we can all get together and we can celebrate, and we can, those relationships have been built. It's another group of people that's speaking the gospel into their lives. And so we're anticipating God is going to do big things.
Yeah. Amen. No, that's no doubt there. That's we don't have to put those opposed to one another, caring for their needs and caring for their spiritual needs. Those get to kind of converge, especially during a season like this. On the health side of things, so this seems like an area that maybe is kind of particularly at danger. Like, talk to people about why this is an area that's got a unique kind of challenge just because of the makeup of the population. Like, some of the encouragements and lockdown and social distancing doesn't necessarily take root in a location like Cedar Point. Why? What's the particular challenges there?
Well, large families, lots of people. We have about 168 apartments. I don't know what the average apartment size is, but I know we've got some families that have, 8 to 11 people in each family. So huge amount of people. Then you add in the language difficulties, the language barriers. There's about 30 different countries that are represented there, and quite a lot of languages. Fortunately, the CDC did put out some guidelines. They put out the, how to prevent getting sick and then what to do if you are sick. They wound up putting that out in 9 languages that we were able to print off, and through our sponsors, primarily get them into the hands of the families so that they could see, this information in their own language. But it is a huge task. Most of our adults are very poor at English or have no English at all. So just communicating that has been tricky. We normally have a medical ministry. That is a normal thing that we do. And in normal circumstances, it looks like this person has a toothache. They need to be taken to the dentist, setting up the appointment, setting up the transportation to get them there and get them back. Or this woman is pregnant and she needs prenatal care, setting that up with our partner, Neighbor Health, to get her in to see a doctor and on a routine for prenatal care. So that's our normal medical ministry.
Right.
Obviously, doctors are not wanting to see people that aren't urgent. And so a lot of that stuff has gone by the wayside, but we are still keeping close tabs. How are you feeling? If you're feeling bad, call our nurse and talk to her. Then if she feels like it needs to be something that gets connected up with a medical team, then she takes care of getting them connected up virtually. And either over the phone with a translator. Neighbor Health has access to translators for every language that we have out at Cedar Point. And so that's amazing. They can get on the line with a translator and assess the situation and determine, does this person need to go for testing, or does this person, have allergies or whatever. And then, of course, we've been looking at residents that we know are in the high risk category, the ones that are elderly, the ones that have asthma, the ones that have high blood pressure, underlying health issues. So we've been keeping a close eye on them as well, and trying to make sure that they're looked after. So our medical ministry has never been busier, just in trying to answer calls and check up on people. And we've pasted a lot of information on people's doors, trying to get it into their hands as well.
Yeah, and then you were mentioning kind of before we got on the call about how a lot of these folks that live at Cedar Point are just highly communal by culture, right? And so this idea of stay away from everybody is
I think I told you it was really, really fascinating for me to hear from a missionary that is in an African country. And she said, you have to understand, in this culture, fellowshipping with other people is almost as important as breathing. And so to tell them you can't leave your house, they just want to weigh the odds. It's kind of like one of our grandchildren. Anytime he would be faced with a decision about, did he want to do this thing he knew he wasn't supposed to, he would weigh that with the consequences, right? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? If I do this really fun thing that I'm not supposed to, is it going to be worth the consequences? And it's sort of like that with them. It's fellowship is so important, but I might get sick, and just kind of trying to weigh those decisions right there. So as I told you, for a while I was thinking, why are they not understanding what we're telling them? Because we've had somebody come with a translator and tell them. We put notes on their door in their own languages. We've tried to tell them in English. We've talked to their children. We've tried all these ways to communicate, and still it doesn't seem to be taking effect. And so that was so helpful to understand that was such a cultural thing for them.
That's good. That's good. Awesome. So you mentioned the idea of IDC folks already adopting several of the families. Praise God for that. Are there any other opportunities that you know of kind of coming up where folks might be able to look to get plugged in and help out with?
We feel like at some point in time some of our sponsors will need to be replaced, because they've reached their limit of what they feel like they can do service-wise. And so we're keeping a list of, it's a really short list right now, but we're keeping a list of people on the waiting list that would like to get involved with sponsoring a family. We also feel like there's going to need to be a shift to maybe having a more, I don't know what the right word is.
Controlled.
A group of people that are willing to maybe, go to homes where people are quarantined and deliver food. Not necessarily, will definitely not go, definitely not go in the home, but, just be willing to take that a little bit more of a risk role there and do that. So that's an area where we're looking to roll that out and figure out what that might look like. So I know we're going to need some support, some volunteer support in that way as well.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I think it's something that we'll try to communicate as clearly as possible to the church body. And so IDC family just going to be looking for email communication or announcements or otherwise that tell you kind of where you can at least raise your hand and say, I'd like to hear more, I'd be interested, or something like that. This is definitely a set of neighbors here in our local community who are very much vulnerable, very much on the margins, and we've got a unique opportunity to care for them during this time. So Denise, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for the ministry that you guys are doing. And thanks for your modeling that kind of flexibility in ministry. You guys are plowing along full speed ahead with one direction, and like everybody else, but in a unique way, having to pivot real hard, but still
pivot. That's our word of the day right now.
Right. No doubt. So you guys are really modeling that really well for us. And thank you for leading the families of IDC to help serve them. And thanks for the time. Yeah, really appreciate you taking time to share with us today.
Sure thing.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, thanks.